Hey, what's going on, everyone? This is Mike Kollin at MikeKollin.com. Okay, so I'm going to start this video out talking about, I think is probably the most powerful word, and probably it's almost like this is the core purpose of every human being on the planet, even though they don't know it. Okay, so a long time ago, well, I guess it hasn't been that long, but I used to have anxiety like you would not believe, and I know I've shared that with you a lot, so I'm not going to go too in depth of that, but it was really bad for decades. I mean, we're talking, man, up to almost 40 years. So I was on this journey, this quest, by the time I got into my early 20s, that I had to find a way to get out of this anxiety. I had to figure something out. So this journey led me to something, and it led me to a realization, something that I saw in high school that I didn't quite realize what it was until I experienced it. And then things began to shift. Now, the name of this song is In Search of Solitude by Scott Buckley. So, okay. So what it was, here I was captain of the football team, wrestling team. I was a state champion of boxing already, and just raced BMX racing. I won a couple nationals and stuff like that. And I was just a very competitive guy and in great shape, lifted weights all the time. And you would think like that's the guy that would get the girl. Now, this isn't about dating, I promise you. It's going to shift into something that really has impacted my life on a spiritual level, on a personal level. And it's something that you're looking for. It's the reason why you keep coming back to my videos. If I can make you conscious of it, then you can go after it a lot easier, a lot more direct. It's like now you know where you're going. So I remember there was a couple high school dances where this might have been ninth grade, I think. I'm not exactly, I think it was ninth grade. But I remember, okay, there was these two guys, they were just kind of leaning up against the wall. The bleachers was pushed all the way back to the wall, so technically they were leaning against the bleachers that were folded up, straight up and down the wall. And they just had these two cute little girls that were just looking at them and talking to them and just were all over them. And these guys were extremely overweight. And when I mean say extremely, I mean like these dudes were like 240, 250 pounds, about 5'9", if that, probably 5'8", 5'7". And I'm not making fun of them. That's my point. But it's like I couldn't understand. Like these girls they didn't even notice me. They wouldn't even look at me, and I just like I didn't get it. And then it happened again in another dance, and then another dance, and I'm just like, I don't get it. Like they don't play sports, they don't work out, they don't anything, and they didn't have rich parents either. So I gave up. I just didn't get it. I just thought women were weird. So in my 20s, I eventually went to, like, okay, at this point I had tried a lot of things, from hypnosis to NLP to all kinds of things. You get kind of temporary results here and there, but there was something, it was like I couldn't get there because I'd never been there before. It's like somebody showing you how to get someplace and then going, oh, okay. So people would talk about it. I'd have NLP, trainers go, okay, Michael, now I want you to imagine this and that. And it's like, it was something I couldn't imagine because I had never experienced it before. I had no idea what it was. But I thought I did. Now here's, I'm going to give you a real good kind of counter example. I had anxiety so bad since I was a little child that I didn't think I had anxiety at all. And not only that, but when people are like, oh, I've got anxiety, I just thought, oh God, they're just being babies. Thought it was fake. I thought it was just a made up word. I didn't know what it was. And I remember somebody telling me, I might have still been in high school. I think it was after I think it was college. They're like, Michael, you have anxiety really bad. I'm like, no, I don't. What are you talking about? Like, I didn't think, I just thought, well, this is the way life is. So somewhere in my 20s, probably 23, 24, I don't remember, it could have been a little later, could have been sooner, but somewhere around the mid-20s, we'll say, I found this acupuncturist. Now, I had gone to, like, energy people, I had gone to spiritual people. I mean, I had done everything I could think of at this point. Now here's the other thing. I had already started meditating quite seriously at this point. I think it was a good 9 months into it, or 6 months, maybe a year, but it was every day, and I still really wasn't getting what I wanted. But then someone sent me, and I don't remember how we found this guy. Dr. Chen of Noriega Acupuncture. It was his store. It was on Noriega Street in San Francisco off of 19th. I don't know if he's there anymore. He was quite old back then. This was probably mid-90s, I'm going to guess. So he's like, well, what's going on? I was like, I have anxiety, like really, really bad. I don't know what to do. He was okay, no problem. I remember he goes, no problem, no problem. And I'm like, really? Oh, okay. So he would take me back, and you lay on one of the tables, one of the beds, or whatever. It's like a table, like a massage table, essentially. And he would put these needles in you, and feet, head, wherever, could be your forearms, ears, could be usually your forehead. And then he would have this little, like, it looked like a cigar. He'd light it up, and it would basically burn. It had heat, and he'd put it over the needles. And he always goes, Moxie time, and it was cute. He was a really cool doctor, really cute guy. He goes, Moxie time. So, I was kind of new, had all these needles in, but the needles are super thin, by the way. Like, they're really small, really thin. You could barely feel them most of the time. Sometimes you feel a little bit of a poke. But I remember I laid there. He probably left me there, I'm going to guess 30 minutes. I don't remember. And he took the needles out, and he just told me, he goes, don't talk. He goes, just go to the beach. The beach happened to be right down the road. I know they shared the story. But I remember when I went and sat in the car, I was with my girlfriend at the time. I started to talk. She goes, no, don't talk. Remember? I was like, yeah. And I was trying to explain how good I felt. I was just, I was in the zone. And I hate to use this terminology or symbology, but it's what it was like. It was like I was stoned. I was so mellow. But the difference was it didn't have like a drug-like effect. I wasn't, blah. It was just clean, clear, pure relaxation. Every muscle in my body, every fiber, I was breathing deep and easy. And I cannot explain how well I felt. Now, the reason why he wanted me to go to the beach and just lay there and basically fall asleep or just zone out is because my mind was off. There was nothing. There was no talking, no thinking. It was off. Just empty, peaceful space. So for about 4 hours, it was the most incredible. It was, I cannot explain it. There's no words for it. So I noticed I kind of started to think again, had the internal dialogue started. It was slow though, so it still was okay, but it wasn't that complete I'm going to use the word void. It was a complete void, like the beginning of the book of Genesis, where there was nothing, like this blank canvas that God began to paint on and create. It was just the void, the emptiness, just nothing. And it was so peaceful. Now, he had me come back the first week. I believe it was 3 times. Okay, maybe 4. I think it was 3 times for 3 weeks. And then it was 2 times for 2 weeks. And then it was once a week for, I don't remember how many weeks. And then at that point, it's like whenever I wanted to come back. Now, when I first walked out of there, I thought, walked out of there after the first session, I was like, this is it, man. This is it. Assuming I'd be here for the rest of my life in this totally peaceful state. Well, even the next morning when I woke up, I was pretty peaceful. I mean, I was just just took my time, got out of bed. It was easy. I slept like a baby. And by the way, he gives you these herbs. You got to pay like another. Well, this was back then. I think it was $60 back then. Maybe it was 40. And I bought this little crock pot thing made out of. I think it's made. I'm looking at it right now. It's right behind me. It looks brand new, by the way. I don't know why. But you boil these herbs in this thing. Okay, it's like a teapot but made out of clay. It's a little different. And you drink the herbs, and the herbs clean you out really well. And I think they also mellow you out. I'm not sure if he gave me herbs for that, but regardless, I woke up peaceful. And as I kind of went through my day, I was peaceful for about 4 hours, 6 hours. And then the anxiety started to come back. I'm like, no. And I was like, well, I go see him tomorrow because it was Monday, Wednesday, Friday. So it's like, okay, I can hang on to this, and did it again, and man, did I feel good. So I went back to San Francisco, went down to Noriega, went to a shop, and man, I felt good. And I was like, thank you. And he says, go to the beach. So me and my girlfriend went to the beach again. It's about 50 degrees right now. So it was the same peaceful experience, for 4, maybe 5 hours this time. It was just nothing, just nothingness. This is the best feeling I'd ever had in my life. I mean, there's nothing that compared. So it was kind of the same thing the next day, towards the middle or end of the day. A kind of anxiety, thinking, all that BS came back. And I went back to him and I mellowed out again, but I noticed it lasted a little bit longer. It lasted throughout the whole next day, and I thought, oh, this is nice. And then Sunday came in, and I came again, and my girlfriend's like, don't worry, we're going back tomorrow. I was like, okay. So I did go back, and it just, every time I went, it's like he would say, hey, just go somewhere, go to the park, go to the beach, don't talk. Don't think, don't read anything, just be. So I began to realize why it was he didn't want me to think or talk or read or do anything. It was because it's like he was conditioning this state of mind, this state of energy, this state of being into my system. And so the reason why I'm saying that is because if I just went 2 or 3 times, I never would have been able to go back to that space. Now I'm going to use a good metaphor. So let's say you've never been to Napa, California, you've never been to Vintage High School, okay? But let's say I picked you up at San Francisco Airport and I drove you up Highway 80, then we cut over on, 37, whatever, then went down Highway 121 through Napa, whatever, and then I turned off on, what road is that? I think it's Trancas or Trower. And then we went all the way down and I took you to my high school. And I would say, do you think you could drive there alone from San Francisco Airport? And you'd probably say, probably not, because you'd only been there once. But then let's say I pick you up again in San Francisco or at SFO, and I drive you down, took down the highway, took the turns, did this, did that. And I did it again. And I would say, do you think you could drive yourself here and then back to SFO? And you'd probably say, not yet. But let's say I take you 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, maybe 8 or 9, maybe even 10 times. You'd probably say, oh yeah, I could definitely do it now. And that is the purpose, is to condition this into you to where now you can access it on your own. So when I work with you, now a lot of people think therapy is all about talk. No. Therapy is to get you to let go of all that talk. I mean, it's like, honestly, okay, I've got it. All right, so there's a technique in NLP that also helps you get to this space at least on some level. And the technique is really simple. I remember one day during the training, they said, hey, from this point forward, before you ask us a question, before you order something at lunch, before you turn on the television, before you do anything, even call home, ask yourself, what's my purpose for doing this? And then, now this is a technique that I use a lot, like maybe not every conversation, but I'll use this a lot. I'll say, well, what's your purpose for doing that? And give me an answer. I'll say, well, what's your purpose for that? So then the next thing is to ask yourself, once you get the answer, you're like, well, what's my purpose for doing that? And you're like, well, my purpose for that is this, and my purpose, and it always goes up to like happiness, peace, love, etc., etc. And then when you really get to the final one, it's always is contentment. Why do you want to buy that brand new pickup truck or that brand new sports car? Or why do you want to get your hair cut and go to the certain salon to get it cut in this certain way? It's like, well, it'll make me happy. Well, for what purpose? Well, if I'm happy, I'll feel good about myself. It's like, so what's your purpose for getting a haircut? You might actually say, well, if I get it cut right, I'll feel good about myself, or I'll feel good. You're going to say, okay, so what's your purpose for that? Like, well, if I feel good about myself, then I'll feel comfortable going out socializing with people. It's like, okay, so once you feel comfortable socializing with people, what does that allow you to experience? You say, well, I can express myself, I can talk and just be myself, and blah, blah, blah. And say, okay, so what's your purpose for expressing yourself comfortably and talking and just being yourself? Well, I feel like I'm more alive, like I'm more engaged with life. Now, I'm just like randomly picking stuff out. So we're going up this ladder. So once you feel engaged with life and you feel more alive, what's your highest purpose for that? So we keep going up and up. It's like, well, I'll feel like I'm living a full life and it's meaningful and this and that. And it always comes down to, well, if I have that, then I can feel content or be at peace. Even getting married. Well, why do you want to get married? It's like, well, I'll be happy, and then this, and what's your highest purpose for that? It really comes down to, well, I'll feel whole, I'll feel complete, I will be content. By the way, asking yourself for what purpose, or even if someone's talking to you, just ask yourself, well, what's their purpose for sharing this with me? That will really bring clarity to the conversation. You can even ask it again if you get an idea of it, like, well, what's the purpose for that? You can even ask them, say, hey, what's your purpose for sharing this with me? I'm like, oh, well, my purpose is blah, 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 blah. And it really brings clarity to the conversation. Now, I don't know if you've ever heard this, but have you ever noticed that music, or maybe I should say sex, is like music, or music is like sex? Yes, I'm being very serious right now. Now, I was very involved with music for a long, long time. Starting in first grade, I was in choir, all the way through high school, all the way into college. I played guitar for 7 years. I took music theory in high school and also in college. And I really was in the high school choir when I really noticed the notation. I think a teacher had actually pointed this out. And what it was the music would always kind of start and kind of build and build and build, and then it would go back down. And it would play for a little bit, and then it would begin to build and build and build and build and go a little bit higher than the first one, the first peak, and then it would slowly go back down. And then it would build. And yeah, I'm purposely doing this. And build and build and build, and it's like it's teasing you, okay? And then it would go back down, okay? But then there would be eventually, whether it was the next one or the one after that, it would be what they call a crescendo. And to be quite honest with you, a crescendo is the same thing as an orgasm. Perfect example. I'm actually going to show you an image of my actual of my editor, iMovie. Now look at the music. It starts slow and it begins to build and build. And this is a very mellow song, by the way. And then it crescendos, and then builds and builds and builds, and then it crescendos and goes back down. It starts all over again. This is just like sex. So it begins to build and build until it has the ultimate crescendo, and that is equivalent to an orgasm. Now, exactly with music, what do you experience after having an orgasm? I remember the choir teacher saying after the crescendo, it goes all the way back down. It's like a release, okay? So years later, I started going to clubs, and I really didn't like clubs until I found like what they call lounges, where they have couches. It's very clean, very classy. It's just a much more upscale kind of place to go. And I had anxiety to some degree. I would say, off and on. And I remember one day before I went, I said, you know what, I'm going to go to Dr. Chen, and I'm just going to go the right before they close, about 5 or 6, and then I'm going to do that, and then I'm going to go get a bite to eat, and then I'm going to go to the club a little bit later, about 9 or 9:30, right? So I went to the club, and man, was I mellow. Now, my purpose was just to feel relaxed, because going to clubs to me was kind of a big thing. I didn't go when I was younger. I think I was probably 30, 31 or something when I started going, and I wanted to just feel comfortable, and that was my only purpose for going. And the weirdest thing in the world is all of a sudden all these girls wanted to talk to me. I got a couple numbers, and I walked away going, wow, that was really weird. And, I went a couple more times and was not as successful. And one day I thought, man, I just feel so uptight, It's like, what, I'm going to go to Dr. Chen again, okay? And it was the same thing. And then I noticed, as I remembered back when I had a client, saved her marriage, by the way. It was just 2 real basic things that they had mixed up. And she was so happy. She was a massage therapist. She gave me 10 sessions for free. I'm like, no, we do 1, that's it. Don't worry about it. She's like, no, Michael, please. And she goes, it'll teach you something. And I noticed whenever I would go out after a massage, women would talk to me. So I'm starting to put the pieces together, going, wait a minute. It's being content. It just feels really, really good. And people like to be around that relaxed, calm, content energy. And then here's the other piece, that technique for what purpose for. If I walk you through this technique, you're going to be like, wow, okay, it's one of the techniques I use when people are really, really stressed. I should have emphasized that earlier. And I don't know what to do. I feel stuck. And I'm like, well, what's your purpose for being stuck? And they're like, what? What do you mean? I go, just what's the first thing that comes up? And they'll say, I'm not going to go through it. They'll say, well, A. I'm like, okay, well, what's your purpose for, wanting A? Like, well, if I had A, then I could have B, and B would make me feel so much more better. I'm like, okay, so if you felt much more better, like, how would that make you feel? Like, well, I'd feel like this and I'd feel like that. It's like, so once you feel that, what does that allow you to have or experience? Like, well, if I had that, then I'd feel relaxed, and then things would be mellow, and it always would come down to either the word or a similar word, content. Could be peaceful. I feel like my life is complete. Any word that's close to the word content. So I began noticing a big pattern. Again, yeah, it's the same thing in sex. Well, why do you have sex? Because you got tension, and it could be positive tension, but you've been at work for 5 days and for 40 hours a week, and you got tension, and you have sex, and then you just feel content. And I thought, is this the pattern of life? It's not only this way with music and with sex. It's also the same thing with conversations. A really good conversation will have the same effect. It starts slow, you get to know each other, nice to meet you shake hands, kind of begins to build and build, and then it goes back down. You don't have an orgasm right away. You just kind of go up and then you go back down. It doesn't crescendo and you go up a little bit more and then it goes back down. It's like an ebb and flow, kind of like the waves that come in and out. They're little at first, and then eventually there's this big crashing wave, like the crescendo of the ocean. The stock market is like this. It's not always up and it's not always down. It goes up and down, and then people make a ton of money, and then eventually it crashes. A good comedy show, a good comedian understands this principle. When you can't just have people explode laughing right away, you have to kind of build into the jokes. And the jokes themselves have to build on each other until they come to this big crescendo where all the 6, 7, 8, 9 jokes that you built into it, they all come together and have this massive crescendo. Everything in life does this. Mother Nature does this. The seasons do this when it gets really, really cold or really, really like blizzard winter or hurricane storms. I mean, and then there's a sense of peace and contentment after. So I just skipped the line. I go for contentment. Okay, let's talk about manifesting. Okay, this applies to this. When you become the emotional state of having what you want, it comes to you. So one of the emotional states that I created in my life was contentment. Why? Because it brings people to me. It brings women to me. It brings love to me. People like to be around contentment. And I built this into my course for men because women like to be around the energy. A lot of men, they use what's called push energy. They talk fast. They think, and they logically, and they go. And like right now, I'm already blowing the vibe, and you're like, Mike, mellow out, because you want to feel good. Now here's the thing: when it comes to teaching this to men and talking to men, they're like, well, no, Mike, you got to do energy drinks. You got to drink caffeine. You got to get fired up. I'm like, I am telling you, no. You want to relax because it helps her to relax with you. She feels safe with you, and she'll feel much more comfortable getting to know you. And it feels good being around that energy. But I'm telling you, for most of the men, until they see it again and again, this is bullshit. This isn't real. I don't believe this. And guess what I do with my clients on the phone? The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to gain rapport and then shift into that energy of contentment, because when people call me, they generally tend to be very stressed. They tend to be very stuck or frustrated or in a state of fear. Well, I have to get them out of that and shift them into a state of contentment so they can relax and open up and see the bigger picture. It's very, very comforting. Now here's something that Tony Robbins said. I heard it before in NLP and maybe a seminar and a book or two here and there, but Tony Robbins got the message across. Stop being, I don't want to say a victim of life or of your emotions, but start learning how to create your emotions. By the food you eat, your salt intake, water intake, by the music you listen to, by doing deep breathing techniques, by stretching, there's all kinds of things. And I've taught quite a few things over the last couple of years on this YouTube channel about different ways that you can shift your emotions. And one of the main ones is grounding techniques, internal awareness techniques. Whenever I work with someone, one of the first things I do is teach them these techniques, at least one or two techniques per session. But here's the thing, you have to get really, really good at it. 'Cause some people, when I walk it through, I'm like, man, that feels really good. Like, yeah, it does, huh? But then you eventually have to do it on your own to the point where you can get to that same space that I took you to. One thing I didn't mention that I want to mention also is I started going to this energy healer. I think it was my probably 27 years old or something like that, maybe 20. I'm not sure when I started going to her. Yeah, I was probably around 28 years old, and it was the same thing, man. You would mellow out. It was very similar to what Dr. Jen was doing. And she would say the same thing. She's like, don't talk, go to the beach. And by the way, she lives in San Francisco too. She was go to the beach. She goes, don't think, just mellow out. And I thought, wow, this is another one of those, same kind of thing. So what this does is it gets you to be very emotionally grounded and connected to your emotions and your feelings in a really, really good way. And this is what everybody wants. The reason why you're buying that taco is because you want it to make you feel good. The reason why you're buying that brand new car, that classic car, the reason why you're taking yoga, the reason why you're listening to my video right now is you're trying to find something and you never knew what it really was. You're trying to find that space of contentment, the space of completion. That is what I specialize in. And by the way, once I started having these experiences, I realized what the secret was to those two guys in high school that had their back to the bleachers, and every dance they had these cute girls always talking to them. They were just very content, down to earth, mellow guys. If you guys like this video, please click subscribe, click the like button, go ahead and make a comment. And if you want, you can go ahead and leave a donation. There's a PayPal link right there in the description box. Alright guys, I'll leave you with some music here, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.